You answer that phone, you got to be able to give the client what the client needs. I'm going to answer their question. Now, I'm going to answer it in a way that sets me up for that transitional statement.
Welcome to Masters of Home Service, a podcast by Jobber. Each week, we talk to successful home service entrepreneurs and experts in their field to learn how they built their company so we can make your business more profitable and more efficient. We're in Las Vegas at Blue Wire Studios. Today, we're talking about in-home selling, booking the phone call, how to close the deal, which I'm really pretty jazzed about, actually. So we have Andy Wines. You are the owner of Camo Crew Junk Removal in Wisconsin. You also have a podcast, right?
Yep, Trash Talk Business Podcast.
Awesome. So we're going to continue the conversation. Donovan, you own DIV cleaning service and a couple Christmas-like businesses. Is that right?
Correct. Absolutely.
Cool. Some Facebook groups that you manage.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right. So let's get into it. I want to know, when someone calls you for the first time, calls your business, who answers? Let's get really specific. Who answers the phone? What do they say? And what's the goal of the phone call?
It's real simple. For us, it's our operations person. So it's operations officer. They answer the phone call. First, we want to identify why they're calling us, right? Sometimes it's as simple as, hey, I'm looking for your service. I don't even know what you guys do. Someone referred you, right? So first off, you ought to be investigatory. The goal of the conversation is to make it last as long as possible. The more we talk to them, the more rapport we can build, the more information we can give them, which just gets us closer to ultimately closing and taking care of the project. So they call. First question we ask is, have you used this in the past? A lot of times people will call you, you get halfway through the conversation, like, oh yeah, you were here last week. And you're like, oh, now, right? And now all of a sudden you have a duplicate client. So that's right, it's very mechanical, right? Have you used this in the past? Next question, where are you located roughly? We want to make sure they're in our service area. Next thing is, we ought to ask at that point, if we haven't already figured it out yet, why are you calling? What can we do for you, right? We don't want to get into all the mechanics. Once we've identified that, now we've qualified the customer, right? Have they used us? If they have, we can skip question 2. They haven't, where do they live and what do they need done? Because sometimes like, oh, I need some landscaping done. Cool, that's not what we do. What exactly, and we'll still ask, what exactly do you need done? And we'll find you the best landscaper. If chances are, if you called us looking for landscaping, you're struggling to find one. And so we can now make a referral. If not, next question we ask, how'd you hear about us? And typically when we're asking that question, we're literally building time to get into Jobber and click a new client.
To Google the address and get
exactly. And then people
submit form.
Also, people know their address and their phone number and address and stuff. I like to ask right off the bat, right, so we can track it. How'd you hear about us? Sometimes you're like, oh, I don't remember, or they'll be like, oh yeah, right. It's top of mind. We want to be very conversational. Then it gets into the mechanics. Okay.
Well, it also sets the tone. If they say, "Oh, my neighbor next door, you guys were here last week," it becomes a different phone call.
It's completely like if they answer, if someone called me right now and said, "Hi, I live in this city. This is the job I need done. My neighbor referred you. Can you do that job?" Yes.
Right.
Let's go back to the beginning. Let me log this information. Right. Because ultimately, we want to capture the information and we want to lead the conversation. So it's real simple. We go, now we have our client profile. Now we talk about the project. We understand from that point, depending on the size of the project, can we book it online? Do we need, or book it over the phone? Do we need more information, pictures or better descriptions that maybe they can't provide at this time and they can provide later? Or do we need to come out and do an on-site estimate? Yeah. From there, we schedule the next best thing. Sometimes it's, hey, you're going to send pictures? Cool, I'm going to follow up with you in 2 hours. Or, oh, you're going to be there tomorrow morning? Sounds good. I'll text you tomorrow morning to remind you I need those pictures. So then we can give you the best, most accurate quote. Yep. Or we go right into booking the estimate or booking the job. Typically, we're having this conversation. My goal is that we do not talk about price until we're about 90% in the conversation. I want to add all the value. I want to talk about exactly what we're going to do. I'm going to tell you what is included in the price before I tell you the price. Now, we've already made this assumption that you have a project and we're going to do this. And then when we get to the price part, we've already added and established all this value. Discussing the price is, at that point, very mechanical. Yeah. Right, that's the transaction. Often, with our competitors in this space, people want to get to the transaction right away. What's your project? Okay, this is how much it costs. When do you want us to do it? It's like, well, no, let's have a conversation. Let's get to know them. Almost everybody, so I occasionally still answer the phones. Every time someone tells me where they're at, I'll tell them what I know about that place. Oh yeah, I remember that I went to that restaurant there. Great restaurant. What's your favorite restaurant in the area? And often, I genuinely want to know. I love getting to know the members of our community. So keeping them on the phone is, we're establishing rapport and building value and being intentional with getting to eventually the transaction, because I can be the nicest guy in the world. We have to also close.
Right. Yeah. I think my process is very similar, a few differences. And I think it's also worth noting, don't use your cell phone number. Okay?
Never.
Like, don't get a VOIP number. And And the person answering the phone, okay, is the person that can make that client feel important. If you're up on a roof and you're like, hi, yeah,
Turn the mower off.
Yeah, what's your number? Okay, wait, one second. Oh! Like, so, don't answer the phone if you cannot give that client your attention. So the person answering the phone is the one who can make that client feel important. Our very first step is to build rapport. You gotta be running a professional business. And so just starting out, you can get a free Google Voice number, something like that, route it to your phone during the day, route it to a VA in the evening, route it to your spouse, whatever, but you can route that number to different places depending upon who can add value to that client. The one thing that I do that's a little different than you is if I have a client, like if you called me up, you disc profile, you're a high D, you're dogmatic, right?
Let's go.
Facts
and you're
only.
like, how much is it going to cost to remove a piano from my house? I'm going to give them an answer.
Oh, if they ask,
Okay.
100% right.
Okay,
As soon as they say, hey, how much is it going to cost? The challenge is some people are like, hey, they'll say, how expensive is it to clean up my house?
That's a different question.
Well, it can be $250. It can be $2,500. It can be $25,000.
Yeah.
Let me get some more information.
There you go.
As soon as they ask the question, I'll always, right? Piano is a prime example. We have 2 price points on a piano. My next question would be, hey, here's our 2 price points. Do you have an upright or do you have a spinet? Sounds good. Is it on the first floor? Right. If they want to take the conversation that way,
Right.
sometimes it is up front. Now,
Yeah. So I think
that I'm good with every time.
So I think what's important for us, and one thing that I try to teach everybody answering the phone is you match the client's energy.
Yep.
Right? If you got Miss Sue who's like, hi, Donovan, I heard about, I'm going to talk to Miss Sue like this.
Hey, Miss Sue.
Hey,
Thanks
Miss
for
Sue,
calling.
how are you doing today? Yeah, it's been a few months since we've been out there. How's your dog been? And this, and if the client comes in, they're talking about, hey, I need to get my gutters cleaned. I'm at the house and I realize it's overflowing. I'm going to say, awesome. We can definitely help you out with that. Let me get some information. I'll get you a price right here over the phone. In about 5 minutes, we'll have your appointment set up. Right? So I'm matching that client's energy. And again, that goes back to when you answer that phone, you got to be able to give the client what the client needs. Yep. If they call up and they're just like, hey, you're at my neighbor's house, how much is it going to clean my gutters? I'm going to answer their question. Now, I'm going to answer it in a way that sets me up for that transitional statement. So if somebody calls me, let's talk about Christmas lights, right? So seasonally, we hang Christmas lights, and the rest of the year, we do exterior cleanup. If somebody calls me with Christmas lights, my goal is to develop a little bit of rapport and to get their contact information. That's my number one goal. Because if they don't hire me for Christmas lights, I'm going to retarget them for exterior cleaning for the rest of the year. I cannot carry on that conversation without getting their contact information. And that has to go directly into the jobber. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask them questions to help me develop that rapport. Like you were saying, what's your favorite restaurant? What's this? What colors are you interested? Are y'all warm white light people, or do you like a splash of color and this and that and the third? And then what I'm trying to do in that conversation is get to my transitional question. And so my transitional question for Christmas lights is, have you hired a professional Christmas light company before? And they're going to say, yes, I have. And I'm going to say, awesome. Let me tell you how NC Christmas Lights does it, because we're probably a little different than what you've used before. If they say, no, I have not hired a professional company before, I'm going to say, awesome. Let me tell you how NC Christmas Light does it, because it's probably a little different than what you're expecting. So the first part of that conversation, my goal is to get contact information, and then I just have to somehow get to my transitional question. I get to that question, now I can go into my spiel. Now I can talk about value add and this and that and the third, and I can talk about average pricing. And then by the time I'm done with that spiel, then there's my closing statement. It's the final thing that I'm trying to get to. So I have a start, grab client information. My middle is a transition question that allows me to say what I want to say every single time. And then the close is, how does that sound to you, right? Or I'm going to send you a quote, or let's book an on-site assessment, right? So whatever that close is for you, I now have a start, a middle, and an end, and that takes all the pressure off that phone conversation, right? Because you all, in whoever's answering the phone, they can do it my way starting out, but then they can make it their own so it's genuine.
I think it's really important to remember when someone calls you, you're buying about 8 to 10 seconds in the very beginning before they realize this isn't the company for me. So 8 to 10 seconds, you're keeping them on the line. Remember, they called you, but you still have to earn their time on the phone. And as more time goes by on the phone, you get those increments get more. So at first it's like 3 seconds. Hey, how's it going? Oh, they're nice. 5 seconds, 8 seconds, 15 seconds. Eventually you might get to like you're buying 30 seconds at a time. But you have to look at it through increments, because if you don't, and you're chatting to Kathy, or you don't actually address the problem. I mean, someone calls a heating and air company, my AC's broken. Oh, what's your address? What's your phone number?
Yep.
My wife is freaking out because the house is hot, and all you care about is the address?
Right.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. It must be hot.
Right.
That's a much better way to connect with somebody.
Well, and also tell people why you're asking them that question. Don't just say, what's your email address? Because look, they don't want to give it to you because they think that you're going to sell it to a list and they're going to get a ton of spam. But you say, hey, we send our quotes out via email that have options in them, okay, that you can read through and you can select. So let me get a good email address that you check regularly. Not just let me get an email address. What's an email address that you check regularly so that you'll be able to review what we talked about in this phone conversation? A lot of people struggle with getting a budget from a client. Okay. Like if somebody calls me and they're interested in lights getting put up on a tree, that could be $100,000 or it could be $2,000. And so clients don't understand that. And so when I say, what's your budget for that tree? And if that's all I ask, everybody's going to be hesitant because in a negotiation, the first person who gives a price does what?
Loses.
They lose, right? And so that client doesn't want to feel like they're losing. So when you say, okay, awesome, I think that we're on the same page when it comes to design. Now, we have some clients that will spend six figures. I don't think from talking to you we're there, but we also have some people that, only spend a couple $1,000. And so what I want to do is I want to match my design to your budget so that I can make you happy. If you tell me you have $5,000 to spend, I can blow it out of the park for $5,000. But what I can't do is give you a $50,000 design on a $5,000 budget. So with that being said, what is a budget that you're comfortable with? And give me a high number and then give me a crazy number. And what I'm going to do is on that quote, I will give you a line item that will fit that budget. And then I'm going to give you some options that I just think is amazing because I'm really passionate about lights. And if you think that they're cool too, they're optional line items. You can just check that box on the quote and we can go with that as well and maybe extend the budget a little bit. And they're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Well, I'd be comfortable spending like, $5,000 on this tree or, whatever. And at that point, you're setting them at ease. You're not just saying, what's your phone number?
Right.
What's your address? What's your budget? Again, it's about people. Like people are important. Your clients are important. They have to feel that.
So there's a methodology I teach, EIA. So it's excite, inform, ask. So you're modeling that 100%.
Yeah.
Hey, I love the idea of doing this project for you. I have a couple different price ranges and I need to know where you sit, right? Inform and then ask. Where do you feel comfortable?
Yeah.
And what you do is you put them at ease. You want to get to your question because you want to get that information from them. You know what's next, right? Like with Jobber, it starts with name, commercial, phone number, email address, right? We know how that looks. However, there's a way to get that slowly and organically. Like you said, hey, we love communicating day of service, right? So we use email or text messages. Which do you prefer? Okay, that's your preference. Okay, can I have both of them in case one of them doesn't work, right? Or whatever, right? And all of a sudden now people are, absolutely, yeah, I want you to show up on time, right? Because now we're investing in that. We want to show up on time and we want to communicate effectively, right? So in my head, in order to do that, I need to know how to get a hold of you the day of, and I need a secondary point of contact. And once you say it like that, people never ask because you've already informed them why you're asking for their email address if you don't already have it.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I know we're spending some time on this.
It's great. I want to.
Well, here's the thing: like that, you don't get a second chance to make a first impression.
It's the most important part of the
most important part of this whole thing. And you got to set the client up for what's coming next. The whole thing or for customer experience is managing expectations.
Yep.
The customer needs to be set at ease. They need to know what's coming next. And here's the thing, like whoever's answering the phone, they can't be so focused on their job of, oh, well, I got the client's information, so I did my job. No, like the whole point of this is to close the deal and make the client happy and have them come back 15 times and refer us to 1,000 people. Like that's the goal of it. So we got to set them up for the next steps. And they got, whoever's answering the phone, they got to realize they are the most important part of the team. Now, another hint is everybody's the most important part of the team. But like each step is very important, and you got to set that client up for what's coming next, and they have to fit into your way of doing business, right? We want to accommodate the client, but we also want it to be a win-win. What I say is I love dogs. When I'm not working, I train dogs. So you can't let the tail wag the dog. The dog needs to wag the tail. So the client isn't dictating the terms of that. We've all had those clients that we were like, I knew I should not have sold them. And I sold them, and now I'm stuck with that client, right? And so the other thing is like, if that client's not a good fit, that I want to discover that as early as possible so we can say, hey, you know what? We're not really a good fit. We got some clients that we don't want to work for. And so when they call us back, we're like, that's cool. You can add a tag in Jobber, like do not work. We can be like, you know what? We've changed our service area. You're right outside of our service area. Right. And they're like, well, you just did the neighbor's house. And I'm like, yeah, our service area stops there. You know what I mean? It goes
to like qualifying. you can't book every person because some people are outside their budget. There's reasons that people can't work with us, and so it's okay to save your salespeople a trip to their house.
Yeah.
You have to qualify for them. If they're not prepared to spend $5,000, if they want to spend $500, it's not a match. And there's good ways, professional ways to qualify those people on the phone, kind of like how you explained earlier, without being rude and unprofessional and making them go leave a 1-star review. There's ways of doing that. Which is important.
So that's what those first couple of questions we ask. My goal is to disqualify them.
Yeah.
I want to find a reason not to work with them.
Right.
And often because my end state, like you said, I want to over deliver. If you're outside of my service area or the work is outside of our comfort zone or what we're good at doing, I don't want to say yes to everybody. When I first started in business, I said yes to everybody.
Well, the thing is, as you grow, you cannot afford to say yes to everybody.
No, but you
like as a business, you literally can't afford to do that. And when I started out, I was the cheap guy. I think a lot of people start out as a cheap guy. Like that's their competitive advantage. I was like, I'm going to charge so little that even the DIY guys will hire me. Like genius level, right, of marketing right there. But now that we're charging like premium pricing, I'm the most expensive. I am the most. The moment I hear somebody else in my area that charges more than me, I raise my pricing. Like my goal is to be the most expensive, and I'm trying to over deliver. Well, with that, I have a lower conversion ratio of people calling in. So if through a Facebook lead or something like that, if we're getting back into marketing, if that lead comes through Facebook, I might only have like a 5% conversion rate. That means 95% of people, I'm trying to filter them out, and that all starts with that first phone call.
Let's take a quick second to talk about Jobber and why we like it so much. Donovan, why don't you go first?
I got 2 features that I love. I couldn't run my business without them. First one's Jobber payments. It makes it very easy for the client to pay me. And that's what we want. We want to make it easy as possible for the clients to give us money, right? And the next one is optional line items. I think that Jobber has different tiers. A lot of clients, they shop around for 2 or 3 options. Well, I'm like, okay, cool. I can give you 3 options right here on my quote, right? Yeah. I can give you a good, better, best, or I can give you an a la carte. Pick exactly what you want. And so having those optional line items has been a game changer for us. And also you can add the photos. And so you can make junk removal look sexy by having, having like a good photo right there that people can visualize. And especially for me doing the Christmas light industry where we're charging premium pricing, like people don't want to, they can't visualize a 60-inch wreath, but when you have a wreath that is as big as a person on a beautiful home and there's that optional line item, they can check that box and they see the beautiful picture right beside it. Like that's been a game changer for us.
As you know, the $500 quote can become a $5,000 quote with those optional line items. It's amazing.
100%.
Andy?
Yeah, mine comes down to integration. The fact that it integrates with other systems that I use, whether it's QuickBooks, Nice Job, Fleet Sharp, I can track my trucks, I can track my clients, I can track my money, and all I have to do is put the information in one time in a Jobber. That's it. Integration's the key.
Yeah. Talking about sales, I think mine is the online booking, which is relatively new, but we're using it for one of my businesses. People can book at midnight, at 3 a.m, and it's amazing. We show up and they're expecting us. Online booking is the future, and I'm really glad that Jobber released that. If you want to try Jobber, which you should, you can go to jobber.com/podcast deal for an exclusive discount for new users, and it'll make your whole business more efficient, more profitable, and just better. We'll see you. Let's talk about pricing. So do you exchange money over the phone ever?
Yeah, I make it as easy as possible. Yeah, I'm making it as easy as possible to pay me as soon as possible. Matter of fact, when I'm taking down their lights in January, I'm getting them to sign back up for the next year. Yeah, I want it easy as possible. Before Jobber payments, like I always had at least $10,000 in outstanding receivables. Always. Like there was never a time. And when it would get out of control, I'm like, man, I can't pay the bills. I go, look, there's 30 grand that clients owe me, right? And so with Jobber payments, you make it super easy. You put a credit card on file, click save. When we're done, send them an invoice. Like they've signed up for that. And it's a convenience for them. You know what I mean? A lot of my clients, they aren't even home. They've never met us. I've got clients for 5-10 years I've never met. And so we book them on the phone. They put a credit card on file. We go, we do the work, clean gutters. Like why would somebody want to take a half day off work to meet a gutter cleaner that's just going to go scoop, drop?
And this is more industry specific, I know, but let's get into pricing a little bit. Flat rate pricing, how do your people, because you're not answering the phone anymore, how do your people price it? Let's talk about that a little bit.
I mean, for junk removal, it's all comes down to capacity. How much stuff do you have? How much of the trailer or truck is going to fill? And then we go from there. So 90% of the jobs, 95% of the jobs, we can book over the phone with the right description and or pictures.
Residential, I'm assuming.
Residential. As soon as we get into commercial or deconstruction, we always come out and do an estimate. One thing that people are trying to bait us on before we do an estimate is like, hey, what do you think it's going to be? And I tell people the same thing. I don't think. I've made it 39 years of my life without thinking, right? I ask good questions and I compare the good questions against the known information, right? I know what a cubic yard is. Our guys know what a cubic yard is. We can explain what a cubic yard is to our customers.
They don't know.
Right. If they say, hey, I got this, this, and this, okay. If you tell me you got a couch, a love seat, an entertainment center, all right, I know how much my trailer that's going to fill up. If you say I have a house full of stuff, I can't think, I don't know what that means.
So that requires an in-home, a salesperson going to the home. Is that
Correct.
what that?
So we don't ever use a salesperson. We talked about this at dinner last night. For us, it's our fleet commander or field commander. We debating the title here these days.
I want an outer space fleet commander.
Outer space fleet commander. And the reason is they go out and their job is to make an assessment of what tools, resources are going to be needed for the job, and then how much it's going to cost to get those tools and resources over to the job. And so it is absolutely a sales function. I'm an operations guy. I look at sales as making the phone ring. Once the phone rings, operations takes over and swings through the pitch, because we know, right, we have a certain close percentage because we know that not every customer that calls us is qualified. We don't know that yet.
I think there's a huge distinction. We were getting so many phone calls. I just told my person, just get their name, address, and we'll send them a quote later. That was the only way we could keep up. And we lost a lot of business that way because what they do, they hung up, oh, thank you for, and then they call the next guy. Oh, yeah. And they kept calling until someone solved the problem. So with you, what you just explained, if it's a bigger job, and ideally you just can't quote that over the phone, if you have a scheduled assessment at 9 o'clock on Wednesday, in their mind, you've solved their problem. They're not going to call around because you have it booked. So if you can't get money over the phone, at least schedule that appointment, not just like, yeah, somebody will call you from here. That's the kiss of death.
Yeah, I want to close the deal on the phone every single time.
Yeah.
Right? With the exception of where we know it's going to be an operational liability, where it's going to be a demolition or deconstruction or a large project, or people aren't communicating effectively what it is they need done. That's one of the challenges of our industry. Yeah. And so if I can get pictures, those are the ones I don't like hanging out when I say, hey, just send me some pictures, because that next phone call they might go with. And actually, I was talking about this yesterday about Jobber has where people can book online. And I've talked to a few other people in my industry, and they said, yeah, let them book online. Let them determine how much of a trailer or truck they need. And if it ends up being more, we figured it out when we get there. We're already there.
That's what we're doing. Yeah.
We've already solved the problem.
So one thing that I've struggled with, right, I've done it wrong, is I never had in-person sales, right? We started doing some in-person sales because some people really value that. Some clients really value that. And I think that our process shouldn't be so rigid that it disqualifies those people. Like, that might be a premium, good paying client, but our business doesn't support that. Now, in the beginning, I'm okay with that. But you get to a certain point that you're like, okay, look, it's cost me $200 to get that person to call, for that phone to ring. I want to try to maximize on that. And another thing that I've messed up is trying to turn technicians into salespeople. Every now and again, like usually per company, you're like, I got one guy that he's the best. Like, when he shows up, he's always upselling. He's always doing this. But everybody else, they just don't do that. Like, there's a reason that a technician is usually a technician. You just can't train every technician to be an amazing upseller. They're there focused on the work, and they're so focused on their part of the work that they're not like thinking about, oh, we can make more money for the day for the business. So what I would say, if you're going to do in-person sales, a really important thing to remember is that a salesperson can only handle so many appointments that day. And I found that it's 5 appointments. And that's usually an hour, 2 hour long appointment, plus you got drive time or whatever, but they really can't handle more than that. So if you only have one salesperson and you get 6 phone calls that day, then you can set 5 appointments, but you have to be able to quote that 6th one over the phone, or you have to throw them away. You got to disqualify them. And I'm okay with whatever you decide, but I would say at a certain point, you got to be able to say, okay, I can set 10, 15, 20 sales appointments for the day because I have this number of salespeople, but then I'm going to quote the rest of them online so I don't just miss out on that work. Yeah. And then you can retouch them and upsell them on the job site, or you can retouch them through your automated follow-up sequence a couple months later or something like that.
So that's a great point. So in terms of the operations of the company, there's usually 2 legs. There's sales, which we're talking about now, and then production. Yeah. And they're cousins. They work hand in hand. And there's a handoff that happens between sales and production. So you go to talk to Miss Sue, she signs up for all these Christmas lights, and there's a lot of things, a lot of details that are exchanged in that conversation.
Right.
Expectations about timing, expectations about pricing, expectations about location and where things go and all that. And how do you guys make sure that the production team is set up for success? Because it's all related to sales, really is. Quoting, estimating. It's a big question. Let's get into it.
Well, that's not easy. Let's start by saying that. Like, it's called the customer journey. I think that's what we're kind of talking about. That handoff is the customer journey. People who are the worst about it, I'm sorry if these are any of our clients here, is like, I feel like the cable company. I've never had a good experience with the cable company where, everything that I call them and I talk to them about on the phone, they make all these promises and they book the appointment. And then the technician shows up and they're like, bro, what are you even talking about? We don't do that. And I'm like, but the person on the phone promised me all this. And so like, for me, I've had so many bad experiences. I was like, I want that everybody who's going to interact with that client to manage the client's expectations every step of the way and be consistent. So if my office person who answers the phone, office admin, if they are going to give them a ballpark pricing, okay, when the salesperson shows up at the on-site assessment, it needs to fall into that or be less than.
The salesperson
you can't be more than that.
Know
yeah,
what
you cannot be more than that. That's called price sandwiching. Okay, if you're going to give them a price here and a price there, and we're going to meet them somewhere in the middle, that first price you give them can't be down here, and then you meet them above that. Like that is not going to create a good customer experience. People need to be cognizant, or the team needs to be cognizant of who they're handing it off to and what that other team member is going to say. Right? So there has to be some good communication between our team members. And then same thing with the technicians. So one thing we do is the person answering the phone, the office admin, they are going to set expectations for that client and tell them what's coming next. If it's an on-site assessment, again, hey, what did you talk about? Ask them, hey, what did you talk about with the office admin? Don't just jump right into your own personal spiel. Like you say, okay, what was your expectations of this on-site assessment? Okay, very cool. Well, you know what? Let's walk around the property. I'm going to walk around with you, and let me see if I can point some things out. Like to your point, maybe they have some wood rot. We don't do wood rot, but they didn't know that was wood rot. Yep. The other thing that's going to help out is when we're there power washing or we're there hanging lights, we're not the one that made that wood rot. I mean, we're going to have to take photos of it and everything else. And then we walk our client through that process. We hold their hand and we say, all right, awesome. So let's do this. Give me about 10, 15 minutes. And I actually invite myself into their home. I said, give me about 10, 15 minutes. And what we'll do is I'll come in, we'll sit down at the kitchen table. That's where friends meet, right? So we'll sit down at the kitchen table and we'll just go over all the options. I'm very much a low pressure sales guy. So I'm going to give you the options and you just tell me what works for you. 10, 15 minutes. I have my measurements. I have all my photos. I go in and I sit down with Miss Sue and I go over all the options. And I say, look, my goal is to get a 5-star review from you. I've been in business for 15 years. I want to earn your business for the next 15 years. All right. This is what we can do for you. This is what we can't do for you. All right. We agree upon a price. We agree upon what's going to get done. I make my notes in Jobber. I make my internal notes so that my technicians can then see that. My office admin can see that. Right. So it goes both directions on the communication. And then we book the appointment, right? I call the office right then and there and I say, hey, this is what I just talked with Miss Sue about, okay? And I go over everything on the phone with the office admin.
With Miss Sue on the phone, right there with her.
We're still at the kitchen table, right?
That's
and
good.
so
like
she hears me tell the office. And so it's very clear to the client what's going to happen. It's very clear to the office. Now, if the salesperson isn't available that day, the office admin, the technician can call the office admin. The office admin's part of that process, right? So it's all about that customer experience. And again, now it's the day of service. The technician's out at the job site. The very first thing they do is they say, hey, I have a few notes right here in my system. This is what we are going to do for today. Is that what you were thinking is going to get done? Right? So again, we're managing client expectations. Again, if there's any problem, you address it and you fix it before you start the work. The worst thing in the world is you do the work, you don't do the work that the client thought, and you send them the invoice. Oh, yeah. Once you invoice that client, like it,
game over.
It's game over, right? So be proactive, not reactive.
Andy, one thing I've learned is that we want to be able to produce a job, even if the salesperson is on vacation.
Yeah, well,
we don't need to have that morning of, so what did you promise them? So how have you learned to make that handoff smooth so that the client expectation is realized?
Yeah, what Donovan said earlier was dead on. Is not that the operations officer, manager, assistant, whatever that title is. It's not that they're the most important. It's most critical for your business because that is the hinge. That's where it goes from sales and marketing to production, as you call their operations. Where the operators or technicians start to do the thing. And so there's some best practices so that you're consistent about it, right? So what we do is within Jobber we put all the important stuff that the customer needs to know in the line items because it's customer facing. We put the stuff that we need to know in the notes.
Right.
It's very nuanceable and there's a reason behind it. So we have right in the description, this is exactly what we're taking on your house. And the notes will say, hey, bring this tool, bring this, and that way our guys are set up for success. When they get that text message, email reminder, it's all right there. When we send them a quote, we'll send them a quote day of, right? I always put I got my Bluetooth in the whole time because I'm dictating notes. And I tell the customer right to their face, hey, Miss Sue, I'm going to give a call to the office. You said Thursday morning looks good. It looks good on my count. I want to verify with the office that Thursday morning is still good. I call the office. It's a 30-second conversation. It normally goes exactly like this. Hey, Jake, the quote is built. I'm here at this house. We use a slice report. I call it situation, location, impact, course of action, execution. Military thing. The impact of my quote is that she wants to go with a job, right? Course of action, we need to book her job. Execution, I need you to press the buttons, right? Because for often when I'm calling back here, he can see what trucks and what assets are available a little bit easier than what I can see on the phone. And also now, I'm now handing it off to him. I went from sales function, met with a customer. I'm doing it all in front of him. I love that. That is best practice.
Good idea.
And now when I leave, as soon as I get in my Jeep to pull up that driveway, I'm not even thinking about that job anymore.
Right.
I know that I asked the right questions. I know
Mentally, you can move on to the next appointment.
I care about Miss Sue. I want her job to be amazing.
But you gave
However,
100% while you were there.
I know all my notes are there.
Right.
I upload all my pictures. I do everything I need to do in that driveway before I pull out.
Right.
And now I'm on to the next customer because what I want to do is make sure I deliver for that next customer. I don't want to go to the next customer thinking about the last one of what I didn't
forgot.
do.
Or
I got to follow up with her.
Cold.
Right. And if I can't get a hold of the office, most times I can book jobs right on the phone. Right.
Yeah.
Jobber a couple years ago came out where we can actually have like a multi-truck view because we run 10 or 12 trucks a day. So I can look a couple days in advance and I normally can book it on the spot. And then I'll still follow up internal communications with our team. Hey, I booked a job this date, this time, please verify. I don't know. He could be on the phone with a customer looking at that same exact time slots. That's why we have that conversation. And having the customer informed, there's no ambiguity. They know exactly what we're up against.
I'm going to stop you guys there. This was awesome. I've got two final thoughts here. I think if our listeners want to learn more about selling and just how to do all this stuff, I think I would definitely recommend a company called Power Selling Pros. They teach and train CSRs, people who answer your phone, and they're phenomenal. So I would check that out. And also, I read a book called Selling to Homeowners. Awesome book for everything we just talked about. So those are good resources for our listeners. This is a great conversation. I'm going to boil down what we talked about, or try to at least, in 3 actionable steps. Number 1 is, as soon as you can, get rid of your cell phone and get a VOIP or some sort of different number to get. It goes into like work-life balance too, but also you want to have a professional appearance when they call. If you're on a lawnmower and you turn it off, the engine's running, it doesn't sound good. So try to get away from your cell phone as soon as you possibly can. Number 2 is lead the phone call the direction you want it to go. You're the professional, you're in charge. That goes down to finding out the why they called in the first place, why, to booking it that same day. Solve their problem as soon as you can. Number 3 is match the client's energy, their personality type, match them. If they're really stern, be stern. If they're really talky and chatty, be chatty and talky. And match them as much as you can. Because the more you match, the more you connect. The more you connect, the more you sell.
Yeah, absolutely. You're dead on in all those points.
Awesome. Yeah, if the client likes you, they're going to hire you.
Yeah, exactly. How do people find out more about you guys?
Best way to get a hold of me is andywines.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn and Facebook. And you want to hear more tips and tricks really in the junk removal industry or really home services on the whole, the Trash Talk Business Podcast.
Yeah, the best way to reach me is probably directly through Facebook. So send me a friend request, Donovan Questenberry, or direct on Messenger. And if you're interested in adding some seasonal revenue during the holiday time frame, one of the groups that I manage is Christmas Light Contractors. We're geared towards helping the brand new person start and be successful in their business.
Awesome. Sounds good. Guys, thanks for being here. You guys are both having an impact on your clients and also the communities. You have both podcasts, Facebook groups. You're doing more than just running a business. You're building other people up, which is really important. So I really appreciate it. Thank you for listening today. I hope you heard something that will make your business more profitable and more efficient. I'm your host, Adam Sylvester. You can find me at adamsylvester.com. Remember, your clients, your communities, your team, they deserve your very best. So go give it to them. We'll see you next week.